good. It's good.
Okay. Sholet asked me, we find Chosin Moshe, repeated many times. So Rashi, we're going to see in a moment, the reason why it mentions it, because until now, Moshe always prided himself that he had this father-in-law. So it was always Moshe, Yisro was Chosin Moshe. Afterwards, Yisro prided himself who Moshe was, as a result of what happened. But before that, we find, I had mentioned the Gemara yesterday in Sanhedrin, that Paro had three advisors, Yisro, Eov, and Bilam. And when Bilam had suggested the enslavement, and Paro felt it was the right thing to do, Yisro Borach, Eov Shosak. Now, that Yisro was Borach, that he fled in protest, what does that indicate about Yisro, what his position is regarding Emes? A person who's Nish Emes, we see people, they'll sacrifice a principle, whatever those principles are, whether they're correct principles, not principles, he said, but already yet. But a person believes in principle, you're willing to sacrifice for principle. We find Moshe Rabbeinu, his midah was emes. We find when he saw the Mitzri beating the Jew, regardless of the consequences, Moshe Rabbeinu understood it's possible somebody may see and inform on him. It wasn't part of the cheshbon. It wasn't part of his calculation not to. Regardless of what, even if there's a chance he could be informed on, he killed the Egyptian. And ultimately he had to flee. He had to leave. 60 years he was out of Mitzrayim. That he would be the advocate in the palace on behalf of Klal Yisrael, it wasn't part of the cheshbon. When you see Emes being compromised, Moshe Rabbeinu did not tolerate it. Moshe Rabbeinu flees to Midian. What happens? He sees women shepherdesses being attacked by men shepherds. Immediately, he goes and he gets into the fray and he fights them off. You're a fugitive. You want to remain anonymous, below the radar. And it'll become public knowledge that all of a sudden this person comes, a stranger, and what did they, and when he came, the daughters came home, and he says, he fought them off, he watered their flocks, they come home early, and their father says to them, why are you home? He says, Ish Mitzri. Because Moshe was dressed like an Egyptian. Ish Mitzri. So if it was Ish Mitzri, so it's obvious word's going to get out that there's somebody here from Egypt. So again, word's going to get out. So how do you act chas v'shalom so irresponsibly? Here you're a fugitive. You have to remain concealed, not to be caught. And now openly you go and fight them off. You put your life in jeopardy. Moshe Rabbeinu came to Emes to watch such a breach of Emes, innocent women being attacked for no reason. He cannot tolerate anything which doesn't meet the standard of Emes. That's Mishpat. That's Moshe Rabbeinu. The Gemara tells us in Sanhedrin, what was the difference between Aaron and Moshe Rabbeinu? Even though we see from the Parsha, the Torah always interchanges the order. Moshe, Aaron, Aaron, Moshe, Shishkulam Hoyu. In a certain regard, they were of equal standing. But yet, Aaron's approach and Moshe's approach were two different approaches. Aaron is Oev Shalom, Rodiv Shalom. He loves peace, he pursues peace. Moshe Rabbeinu is Yaakov Hadinisor. If there's a halacha and the mountain's the way, you pierce the mountain for the sake of the halacha. Meaning, Aaron, it's mitzvah lasus pshara. If the Bezdin, if the Dayan could somehow work out and convince both Balei Din, both defendants, they should have mediation, that's the way to go, mediation, because that's shalom. And it says mitzvah lasus pshara. It's a mitzvah to try to have them agree that they should mediate, because both of them walk away satisfied. That's shalom. Moshe Rabbeinu never mediated. It was always Yaakov Hadinisor. The din pierces the mountain. If the din says this, no compromise. Even there, he doesn't even encourage mediation. Why? If mitzvah is pshara, why did Moshe Rabbeinu always want what it is. Everything's black and white. The answer is because Moshe Rabbeinu was din. Moshe Rabbeinu is emes. Emes, you never compromise emes under any circumstance. And the reason why Moshe Rabbeinu was the only human being that was qualified to receive the Torah, because the Torah itself is emes on the absolute level. As Shlomo says in Mishlei, emes kenev al timkor, acquire truth and don't sell it. And our connection to the absolute emes, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Gemara tells us that the signet of Hashem is emes. Therefore, as a result of that, Moshe Rabbeinu was the only one who meets the standard that he can have that relationship with the Mekor emes, with the source of emes, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But again, this is a continuous display of Moshe Rabbeinu having the characteristic of emes. We see the whole thread continuous. That's Moshe Rabbeinu. You saw that he was borach. He had that midah, he had that characteristic of emes. How do you flee in protest? Paro is the monarch of the most advanced civilization, the most powerful civilization, in every sense of the word. If you're borach, you can embarrass the king. It's a disrespect. It's a breach of protocol. How do you do it? The answer is such a level of miscarriage of justice. There's no cheshbon. This level of breach, I cannot tolerate. But what are the consequences? You don't take consequence into consideration. It's not an issue. It's a breach of emes. We find that Moshe Rabbeinu fights off the shepherds, and they come home, and he says, they tell the father, because there was this Egyptian man, he fought off the shepherds, and he watered the flocks. That's what he says. But why don't you invite him home to break bread? So Rashi over there says, he's a potential shidduch. He's a shidduch. He may be a mate for one of you. Why don't you come home? So Rashi says, why? Why did Yisro say that? Because he saw that Moshe made it with him. He was at the well, the water rose towards him. And that was the characteristic of Yaakov, that the water rose towards Yaakov. That means he's a descendant of Yaakov. That's why he's special. That's Rashi cites Chazal. The Maral explains that Gvurus Hashem, a person who goes, and a stranger, he gets involved in something which is not his affair. Not only that, he puts his life in jeopardy. Did Moshe Rabbeinu know? If he fought off a few shepherds, he could be killed. The answer is, a man who goes and gets involved for the sake of emes, he's special. But really what brought it over the top was, a man who does such a special act, even if you want no payment for that, no fee for that, but at least come home with my daughters and share with me that you want to be acknowledged. Minimally, you should be acknowledged for that exceptional act of sacrifice that you did. Moshe didn't even follow them home to tell their father, I'm the man who saved your daughters. He wasn't interested in any acknowledgement, period. Yisro recognized this as an exceptional midah. This is quality beyond quality. And Yisro was a man of the world. He was a world statesman. And a man should do such a special act and not want to even be acknowledged, just walk him home and say, I'm bringing your daughters home safely. To be acknowledged as much as an iota, no interest. Yisro's eye saw, this is one of a kind of person. How did you not invite such a person home for a shidduch? He could be one of your mates. So you see, Yisro had an eye, but this all goes back, a person, years ago, when somebody wrote a book, Wall Street, chutzpah. How do you get ahead in life? Chutzpah. A person who's quality, refined, meek, the refinedness and the humility takes his meekness. He has a weak spine. There's not a weak spine. Rosh Rabbeinu, when he had to break the luchos, he broke the luchos. Yashkoch shishibarto. He didn't consult with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But he's Anav Mikol Adam. He's the most humble person. How do you take such a responsibility? Anav has nothing to do with understanding of what is. When he had to break the luchos, he broke the luchos. When he came down with the egel and what he did there with the people, he pulverized the egel, and he right away said, kill the idolaters, and so on. But you're not even called them. How do you come with such definiteness? You're supposed to be a humble guy. Humble, humility has nothing to do with meekness. It's nothing to do with it. But has the world see humility? Nobody appreciates humility. He doesn't have the spine. He doesn't have the wherewithal. Where's the chutzpah? That Yisro was able to appreciate this midah of humility that not even want to be acknowledged. You'd say the guy's a zero. The guy's nothing. But Yisro appreciated that. So he was a person already appreciated emes. He appreciated justice. So when you see a person who appreciates emes, when you see emes, immediately you notice it and you confirm it and you embrace it. That's Vayishma Yisro. He heard something nobody else heard because he had relevance to emes. The world, Yisro was Ovid Kol Avodah Olam. He worshipped every idol, and he came to the conclusion it's all false. Was he the most brilliant person in the world? There are other people his equal. He was the only one who rejected all idolatry. Why? Because he was looking for emes, and when he found there was fallacy, he rejected it. Nobody else is looking for emes. As long as you get ahead and everything works out, it's okay. Yisro, that wasn't the lens. His lens was emes. It's emes. If I see it's not emes, then I reject it. Therefore, it's kafar b'chol avodah sheba'olam. After serving them, he rejected them. But again, that's the midah of emes. Therefore, it's vayishma Yisro, because he has the midah of emes, which he displayed many times, and he's willing to sacrifice emes. Therefore, when he saw emes, he immediately appreciated it, was able to internalize it, and make a difference in his life. Torah tells us, we just had Rabbeinu Yonah, there's a law, lo seguru minayish. Lo seguru minayish. A person's a dayon. He's not supposed to be intimidated by any defendant. As long as it's not pekuach nefesh. Regardless of the consequences. You have a rich man and a poor man, or two people. And you're intimidated by the rich man. And as a result of that intimidation, it actually colors your lens and you become slightly biased that you want to favor him because he's a rich man, or he's a powerful man, whatever it is. Lo sugur meish. You're not permitted, a Torah violation. Because when you deal with mishpat, the mishpat is Hashem. Hashem is emes. You can't in any way allow yourself to be intimidated. If you're in a position that you understand what it's all about, you qualify to be the dayan. The moment this is compromised, you have to disqualify yourself. You're not permitted. And if you do, and you are intimidated, you're in violation of Allah. Lo sugur mish. You cannot withdraw because of anybody. Ki l'kim mishpat. And l'kim nitzav b'das kale. Hashem convenes with the Bezdin. So if Hashem convenes with the Bezdin, if there's any degree of compromise in the criteria what a Bezdin is, the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, the Koveim is Kovim Nefesh, I will take that dayin's neshama. I will take the dayin's neshama. Because there's human justice and divine justice. And if the judge doesn't allow human justice, which has to do with emes, because El Kim Nitzav Daskel, then there'll be divine justice. So because this person did not meet the standard of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu considers correct, because he set the criteria, the man is culpable, even to forfeit his life. It's not because the man was actually cheated out of a penny. Even a pruta, the Gemara says. It's the same idea. If you ever saw pictures of Chazon Ish, especially when he was older, Chazon Ish, he invested his life in Torah at a level of toil, what we call yigia, which was unequaled. When the Brisker Rav was maspid, the Chazon Ish was the Gadol Hador, was the leading Torah sage. And his Chidushim on Shas, even if you study the subject matter, you're in it. You really have to know it very well to even understand what the Chazon Ish writes. That's how specific he is and how deep he is. And everything the Chazon Ish wrote, it's clear. He delved into it, a level of emes, which is very beyond impressive. And he toiled, the Chazon Ish. He didn't weigh 100 pounds, the Chazon Ish. The hat he wore was the same hat that he wore his whole life from his wedding. But the Chazon Ish, and he would walk with a certain cane when he was older, And the Chazon Ish, when somebody would say over Torah, he would take the cane and he'd take his eyes, look at that person to be fully attentive, and he would put the cane under his chin. And he'd rest his chin on the cane and look at that person. And he was at a Sheva Brachos. And somebody was saying Torah. The Chazon Ish never said Torah publicly. He spoke private with people. Chazon Ish never said a public shir. That was a Chazon Ish. Rochaim Kanevsky Zech Tzaddik Levrocha also. He was a nephew of the Chazon Ish. Never said anything. I think he said a shir once. I think in the yard side of his father, he would say a shir. But 99% of his Torah was never said in a shir setting. It was always basically a one-to-one or a very small group of people. Because that's the way Chazon Ish did it. So there's this young person, maybe in his 40s, late 40s, very attractive person, or Sheshiva, attractive personality, has this genius edge to him, and he's speaking at the Sheva Brachos, and he's saying Chidushei Torah, and this person is glowing in his own glory. And he's smiling, he's looking around, and everybody's like amazed at his genius. And he's quoting from here and there, wherever he's quoting from. And the Chazon Ish is taking it all in, and he looks directly at the Chazon Ish, and their eyes lock, and the Chazon Ish says, what about, there's a Mishnah, wherever it is, in Tyrus or wherever it is, and he says 4 words. He says, what about the words in the Mishnah? That was it. It was a refutation of the whole deal. That was the end of his shir, the end of his glory. He took the wind out of his sails. That was that it. Here you're glowing, you're excited, this and that. What about ABC? It's over. You understand? But you think you're holding by Haemes. But if you're getting so excited and glowing in your own glory, don't you realize it's not so simple to come upon Haemes, because that's not what you're looking for. You're not looking for Haemes. But if you look for Haemes, and that's your lens, yeah, one merits Siyata Shmaya that HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows you to come upon Haemes. Yogata Motzose, we're not talking Yogata for your own glory. It's if you're Yogata for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because I'm trying to understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Torah, then especially you merit that Siyata Shmaya. Then it's Motzose. Oy. Just not. Record. Good. Ernie.
If Moshe saw Haemes clearly, what did his anger overtake him when Hashem asked him to speak to the rock, for example, and he hits the rock? What okay. was, yeah.
So Chazal tell us that whenever Moshe became angry, it was nishtach min halacha. He forgot the halacha. Forgetting means it wasn't clear enough to be able to communicate it. After Milchemes Midyan, we defeated Midyan. The Torah speaks about Hagolas Kalim, purging of vessels. A vessel that was absorbed with not kosher through fire has to be purged in fire. It was through water, cooking, it has to be purged through cooking, extracting through cooking. You know who communicates Hagolas Kalim, which is known as Klei Midyan? Elazar. Elazar Kohen. So Chazal said, what about Moshe Rabbeinu? So the Gemara answers, we find when they came back from the Haemes Midyan, from the water Midyan, they did not kill the women. They only killed the men. So Moshe Rabbeinu says he became angry at the Sorei Alofim, at the ones who led them into war, the leaders. He became angry. And then they killed them all. So it says because he became angry, Nishkach min halacha. So Moshe Rabbeinu taught it to Elazar. Where did Elazar know how to communicate it? The answer is Moshe Rabbeinu taught it to Klal Yisrael. Elazar was one of the people. And because Elazar had it absolutely on that clear level, he communicated because he became angry, there were certain aspects weren't at that absolute level of clarity. Therefore, Elazar communicated, not Moshe. So whenever there was anger, there was this level of lack of clarity. Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't communicate it. When he became angry by the seller, and we said, speak to the seller. He had a reason why not, but that reason was faulty reasoning. As a result of that, he failed. But again, it's because he became angry. The anger clouded his ability to come upon that level of truth. says Yisro had heard all that Hashem had done to Moshe Yisrael. Yisrael Amo. So Rashi says, it should say all that he did to Yisrael. Why does it say LaMoshe? Shokol Moshe Keneged Yisrael. Moshe was the equivalent of Klal Yisrael. If it's Moshe and Yisrael. I mean, Moshe is a member of Klal Yisrael. So why does the Torah individualize Moshe? To tell us Shokol. Now, who made this evaluation? He heard all that Hashem had done for Moshe and Yisrael. I mean, did Yisrael have the capacity to make this evaluation? I mean, if the Torah wouldn't tell us Moshe Shokol Keneged Yisrael, would we know Moshe Shokol Keneged Yisrael? He's the equivalent of Klal Yisrael. But he heard all that Hashem had done for Moshe and Klal Yisrael. From here we see Moshe Shokol. This is what the Torah is telling us. This is what Yisrael understood. You understand the question I'm asking? It's clear. And whatever you want to say Yisrael was, this evaluation of Moshe Shokol is only HaKadosh Baruch Hu can make that evaluation. The Rambam writes the Hilchos Tshuva that what's a tzaddik? Rov Zochios. The majority of his actions are positive. And the Rambam writes, this is not something which is a quantitative evaluation, this is qualitative. And the only one who and he says, because you find there's one Aveiro, which is Keneged, which corresponds to many mitzvahs. And there's other things, one mitzvah, which is the equivalent of many other things. So the only one who can make this evaluation is only Kel Deos. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu can make this evaluation. What's the majority on the positive side? Because it's a qualitative evaluation. And the Rambam only HaKadosh Baruch Hu do this. So Yisro, whatever you're going to say he is, to make an evaluation of Moshe Shokol Keneged Yisrael, it's an impossibility. Impossible. So this is something the Torah, he heard what Hashem had done. The Klal Yisrael, Moshe was part of it. He led them. He was the leader. As he said, when he asked permission to go back from Midian to Mitzrayim, he says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu came to me, I have to go back. As God's agent, he says, go back. I have to see how my brethren are faring there. Go back. So it's clear, this over here is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Torah is telling us, Moshe Yisrael, what he heard, he heard, but I'll tell you what you heard. And that's what the Torah is saying. LaMoshe Yisrael. That Moshe Shokol Keneged Yisrael. Just a simple understanding. Eis Kol Asher also. What did he do? Rashi says, Lohem, Biridas Hamon Bear Ubim the man, the bear, and Amalek. The wellspring. Now, firstly, how do you hear about the man? The man we could speak about. How do you know about the man? Amalek, it was Vayav Amalek. Amalek was going to show the world not to be intimidated by the Jews, even though there's Kriyas Yamsuf, the whole world was intimidated. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu never did in the history of existence what he did on behalf of Klal Yisrael, destroying Egypt. And the ultimate destruction was with the Kriyas Yamsuf and how the sea closed on them. You read Samon, we have Rashi says in last week's Parsha that the Umas Olam knew about the man because in the morning, at the end of the day, the man would melt, would go into the streams, and the deer would eat from it, and then the Goyim, they would kill the deer and they would eat the meat. They would have a semblance of understanding what the man was. So he knew about the man, but how do you know about the bear? The bear Shel Miriam. This rock traveled with us, which provided water for us for 40 years. How do you know about the bear? Right? Amalek, you read this Hamon, the bear of Amalek. And once he mentioned Kriyas Yamsuf, what he Asher also La'amo. He did Lamoshe Lisher La'amo. See, Kriyas Yamsuf wasn't La'amo. We were the direct beneficiaries. We fought Amalek. There was a miracle. We experienced the miracle. We could have been killed. We were not. That's also La'amo. That's something HaKadosh Baruch did to Moshe La'amo. The bear, we were direct beneficiaries. We had the water. We had the man. Kriyas Yamsuf was something else. Hashem HaKadosh Baruch destroyed the Egyptians. It had nothing with us being confronted. We had to bring about victory. Right? When Moshe raised his hands, the Jews were victorious. The barrel was a nest. HaKadosh Baruch Hu did a nest for us. So therefore, there's no mention of Kriyas Yamsuf. You read the Samon, we were beneficiaries. The bear, we were the beneficiaries. But Amalek, we were the beneficiaries. But look at the order. I mean, the order was the bear came before they read the Samon, correct? No, this is the right order. You read the Samon, bear, and Amalek. That was the order. Okay. Kihotzi Hashem Zugadola Al Kulam. The ultimate, what he heard, that he did on our behalf, that he took us out of Egypt. That was the most impressive. So we asked the question in the past. If Alan Beyond, I would mention, he probably would give the answer. Maybe. I asked, if a person is in prison and you have guards and you have walls that are 1,000 feet thick, and all the prison guards are killed. All the security is destroyed. The walls are blown out. And the prisoners just walk out of the prison. So leaving the prison, that's Gedola Kulam. That we were able to leave. How could that be greater? Egypt has been decimated. Egypt has been destroyed. He took us out of Egypt. What's the great accomplishment? What's so impressive? We've asked this question in the past. I once mentioned him at Brisker Rov. We say in the Ezras, Mitzrayim Galtono Beis Avod B'Disanu. You took us Mitzrayim Galtono. You took us out of Egypt, Beis Avod B'Disanu, and you redeemed us from the house of bondage. We're talking about two different things. So he explains the two things that happened. There was a physical redemption and there was a spiritual redemption. Two things happened when we left Egypt. Beis Avod B'Disanu, we redeemed, that's the physical bondage. Mitzrayim Galtono, what Egypt, how it affected us. We reached Memphis Shari Tuma. We were so affected by the impurity of Egypt, our spiritual systems totally shut down. It's like, God forbid, people who take drugs and then they're killed and they do an analysis of their blood. They said they had more drugs in their blood than blood. We absorbed so much infectious spiritual waste. And then how do you extract it from us? You're impaired for the rest of your life. And Yisro, being who he was, he understood all the inner workings of Egypt, the witchcraft, the impurity of Egypt. He understood what that was about. So appreciating what that is, and to be able to be totally purged as if it never happened to you. This is something which is beyond just the physical leaving of Egypt. Egypt being the sword is one thing, but that Hashem took you out, meaning, and taking out means he extracted everything from you. He totally cleansed your neshamas, that the traces of Egypt were totally purged from you. That's amazing. It's like a person who's into detox, and he does an analysis on this person after this new system of detox. He says, I've never seen anything like it. He's been so detoxed, there's not even the trace that he ever was a drug addict. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu did to us, that he took us out of Egypt. There was no remnant of what Egypt did to us. That's Zugadol HaKulam. That was the most impressive to Yisro of everything that he heard.
That makes a lot of sense in the sense that